Okay, so you guys have your paint sets, and the first thing I want to show you is how we set them up. When they come in the box, you have them all in rows the long way from yellow, red to the, see how they're side by side there. You'll see how they're different in a minute, but you have to be careful opening these because they can be really hard to open and your paints can fly everywhere. So you might want help opening it. Now I set mine up differently. Instead of having the two yellows side by side that way, we did it this way. And it's totally up to you how you want to do that. I think every artist maybe does their palette a little differently, but it is good to have them in like a color order. So one reason for doing it this way is then you have your yellows over here and you can have a yellow mixing area, yellows and reds, blues and greens, your browns and gray and purple and black. So it kind of makes sense just to have that mixing area across from those colors. Another thing we did is just taped the labels so that we would remember what color we have. And you don't have to do that, but I would recommend that just to start out, you paint a little bit of each color onto the paper or a piece of paper, and you can even cut that out and keep it. If you keep your paints in a box, you can keep it right in your box, or you can keep it in your notebook. That's where my kids have theirs. That way, it just kind of helps you get a mental reference for what does this color look like on paper. And usually when I paint too, I keep a little spot on my page, or I have a scrap paper where I test my colors before I paint it into my picture. So that's one thing. Something else you can do, you don't have to do this, but you can make a little color wheel. Remember the colors red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, violet. This just kind of, there's a couple things I want to show you with this, but when it comes to mixing colors, so for instance, for making really nice oranges, greens, and purples, you want to mix the right reds and blues and yellows. So, let's look at green, okay? The greens that come in your palette look like this. That's the sap green. And then this one's called Viridian Hue. They're nice greens, and you might need them for some things, but they're not super natural. And so it can be hard to get the right green. There's so many greens in nature, so many different greens. So to make a really nice green, you want to mix this yellow. This is the light lemon yellow hue, sorry. And I'm gonna put it over here. Actually, I should have it down here. This is where I wanna mix my greens. So there's the lemon yellow. And then I'm going to mix, you have two different blues here. And one blue is more green and the other blue tends to be more purple. It has more violet in it. So if you, let's see what happens if we mix the French ultramarine blue. That's the one that's more violet. So we're gonna mix that in, and you can see I have this really dull sort of green. Okay, I'm gonna put that on my paper over here. That's not the bright grass green that I want. It's kind of a darker green, more dull and muted. So what I'm gonna do, wipe that out. I'm gonna mix up my other green here. Get my yellow. You wanna try to keep your yellow clean. It gets dirty very easily, so if you touch your brush into a different color, always rinse it before you go back into the yellow. If you get it dirty, that's okay. You can just take piece of paper towel, maybe a little bit damp, and gently wipe that color out to get it clean. So now we're gonna mix the lemon yellow with the intense blue phthalo, and you're gonna see this when they say intense, it's really intense. You don't need a lot to do it, because see how bright that is? So I'm gonna just start with a little, mix it in, and you can get a really nice bright green here. Now I'm gonna need to add more yellow to this. I'm trying to get the color bright enough for you to see. I'm gonna rinse my brush before I go back into my yellow. There, see how nice that green's getting? So let's see what that's like on the paper. That's a nice, more grassy green. So look at that, now you have 4 different kinds of greens that you can make. These are the 2 that came in your palette, and these are 2 you mixed with one of the yellows with each of the blues. And you can use the other cadmium yellow hue and add that to the blues and see what kind of greens you get. These are, let's see, what colors did Selah use here? Anyway, these are just different greens, and you can just play around with mixing different greens. And even if you want to use one that came in your palette, you can add that in and then play around with adding more colors to it to get the green you want. Here's a pretty green too. Let's see. Added a little bit more yellow to it. Okay. I made this dirty. Okay. The next thing I want to show you are just some different, let's look at the purples. I want to show you, if you mix this red, the crimson one, now watch what happens when I mix it with the intense phthalo blue. That was a lot of blue, so I'm going to add some more red. Okay, here's this purple. It's really dark, isn't it? It's not a nice bright purple. So I'm gonna wipe that out. The artists call that, it's a muddy color. So now I'm gonna show you, if you mix the same red, the crimson one, with the other blue, the ultramarine blue. I guess yours doesn't say French on it, it just says ultramarine. We should get a little bit brighter of a purple. It's not going to be super bright, and that's because of the red here. But in theory, it's hard to see it and get it to the right. So it's a little bit more purple. This one is different because I have a magenta. Instead of the crimson red, I replaced it with magenta. So you see you get these brighter purples that aren't as muddy. But this is a great start. Okay. And I believe that's what I did for Selah too, because I have that in a tube, so I replaced ours. But you can see you get different colors. This one's a little brighter. Okay, couple other things. we're gonna paint in, sorry, Penny wants to go outside. Maybe somebody could put Penny outside. She's gonna start barking here. Now, there's a few different things you can do. Let's say you want to paint a leaf. There's some different ways you can do it. So you can start, the paper here is dry, and you can just start adding in your paint onto dry paper. Get this all painted in. And it's good to start at one spot. Hold your paintbrush like a pencil and fill this in as you go, because if you start in one area and then let's say you paint this whole side and it gets dry, you're gonna see a definite line, and that's okay. This takes a lot of practice to get it filled in while it's all still wet. But that's something that you can practice at. Now I'm gonna let that dry because with these watercolors, they're called transparent. So you can paint layers on top of layers and they kind of blend together, and that's how you add depth, and it's also how you darken a color. So we're gonna let that dry a little bit, and I'm gonna show you another technique over here. I'm gonna get my green. I think I'm gonna make this a little more, I need to get some more paint in here. So I'm gonna add some more blue. Clean my brush, get some yellow. Clean my brush, get some more yellow. Okay. So now I'm gonna start painting this leaf, filling it in as I go. I think I went down a little too far there. I gotta remember to fill it in as I go. That'll keep it nice and smooth, the color nice and even. Okay, now there's different things you can do here. You can start adding in more color. See how that color drops in on one side, and you can darken it up like that. The other thing you can do is you can take away color. So I cleaned my brush out and patted it dry a bit, and now look at this. I'm like removing paint. I had too much water there, that's why it spread apart more. So I'll try to wipe my brush a little more dry, and you can get a nice thin bit removed. And each time just rinse and wipe your brush so that it can pick up more color. You can just kind of work at it, and you can remove some color. And you can almost get it right back down to the white page. Now usually if you want white to show, you try not to paint that area in so that it's just the white of the page. But this is another way to, most of the colors that you have you can remove. Okay, so we're gonna come back to this leaf. It's pretty dry. So now I'm gonna take some more paint, and I'm gonna go over top of it. I'm gonna add another layer. I think this might be called glazing. I can't remember. So you can add some more layers in. Just gonna go over those lines. Can make the lines of the leaf this way. You can also glaze over a part that's dry with a totally different color. So let's say we wanted to add some yellow. Get some yellow here, and you can test it before you do it. Now my paintbrush seems a little bit too wet, but I don't want to wash the color off. I just want to get water, so you can dab it actually at the back of your brush, and that removes water from the bristles but still keeps your paint at the end. And then you can glaze over with the yellow wherever you want that to be. So I don't know if you can see that, but just another technique. Now the third thing I want to show you is both of these times we started with dry paper. Over here, this leaf, I'm going to paint the leaf with just water first. I'm going to get the paper wet, and you don't want to get it too soaking wet, but just enough. It's hard to see in this light. You can see it's kind of shiny. Now I'm going to pick up paint. Okay. Can you get a Kleenex or something, honey? I'm going to drop paint into the water. And you can see it'll kind of spread around. I should have maybe gotten some more paint mixed up before I started this. And the water, because of surface tension, the water is only gonna, or the paint is only gonna go where the water is. It's not gonna go outside of where the water is. And I can drop more water in here. Maybe didn't have enough to start, or it dried out. Now this can be so much fun, because let's say this leaf is gonna start dying. So it's changing colors in the fall. So I'm gonna add some orange into it and some bits of brown. And that is just gonna naturally spread wherever the water is. Okay, and when it dries, it'll have sort of this effect where all the colors are nicely blended. Here's the one with the glazing where I painted on top when it was dry. Or you can even do it when it's still a little bit wet and you won't have such distinct lines. Here's where we removed paint. And this one I did wet. I painted it wet with just the water, and then I added in color. You can see some spots here where the color, and then I went over it with a black pen or a marker. And that's the other thing. The paint sets that we have don't come with black. You can get black someday and add that in. But if you want to add black, something else you can do is just when you're done, come back over with a colored pencil, and see, I want to add a little hole there or something. And you can add that in, or maybe the edge to be brown. So I do this a lot with my birds. I'll paint them and then I'll use a colored pencil to add in some detail. So you can do that. If you mix your red and blue, this is the ultramarine blue, you get purple. But then if you add yellow, you can get some nice, this I have not gotten very good at, but you can get some nice, see, that's still a little too yellow. Maybe I need more blue. Some nice grays. This way, and even browns. Just some really nice neutral colors. Look at all those colors, and I'm just adding in different things, playing around with it as we go. So I think that's everything I was gonna tell you. When you're done, you don't want to just close your paint set up like this. Let everything dry. That way if it gets tipped, the colors won't bleed and run into the other paint palettes. You can even let these colors dry in here if you want to have them there for the next time. Or you can take your paper towel and just wipe them out and get it nice and clean. So it's ready to start with new colors for the next time. I think that's it. So just have fun playing around. If you're using the brush that comes with your set, be really careful when you put it away, because the hairs, I don't know if you can see those hairs there, how they've gotten smushed. So that happens. Just put it in real carefully. And